Welcome back to the Knowledgeable Programmer channel. This is the series where we're going through Codecademy's Learn Express code. I'm doing this with my good friend Lloyd, who's a trainee developer, and he's learning the backend.
So route level app.use single path. Now that we've managed to refactor our duplicate code into middleware functions, we should be noticing that our code contains much less repetition than before. Unfortunately, we still have duplicate code in some of our routes. Since this code isn't shared by all of our routes, the previous syntax of app.use won't work. Let's see what the Express documentation for app.use has to say about this use case. So this is the app.use function signature. So we've got, an array, a callback. So in the documentation for many programming languages, optional arguments for functions are placed in square brackets. This means that app.use takes an optional path parameter as its first argument. We can now write middleware that will run for every request at a specific path.
Just like we were doing with the router. Remember that we gave the router a path and then we attached the router?
Yeah, I remember.
So yeah, that's basically what they're saying. We can run middleware for a specific route, a specific endpoint, I should say.
So in the example above, the console will print user has hit the endpoint sorcerer. If someone visits our web page's sorcerer endpoint, since the method app.used was used, it won't matter if the user is performing a get, a post, or any other kind of HTTP request, since the path was given as an argument to app.use. This middleware function will not execute if the user hits a different path, for instance, spells or sorcerer's ID. So yeah, it's got to be this exact path. It can't be anything else. We're going to refactor all the logic that checks the existence of a jelly bean into a new middleware function. Okay. Currently, this logic is being used in every route that begins with bean/. So we've got the wildcard, and it looks like this. So we've got we've got a constant which is holding the wildcard rec.params.bname. We're saying that if we've got an object somewhere with a key of bean. So if that's falsy, we're gonna do the res.status 404, which is the error. I think is that not found, the 404?
Yes, not found.
Right. Wow, there's so many to remember. And then we're gonna send bean with that name doesn't it not exist, okay? So we check to see if the bean with the supplied name exists in jelly bean bag, and we send a 404 response if it does not. The return statement ensures that we break out of the middleware and don't try any operations on a non-existent jelly bean. Yeah, so basically just a JavaScript function then. Because like with a function, this tells JavaScript to pop the function off the stack, right?
Yeah, it tells it to basically stop at that. After that point, it should not run any more code.
So it says here, create a new app.use call after you log in middleware. So down here, so app.use. It should be called for all of the bean routes. Okay, so we're going to hit the bean route with a wildcard.
That is sort of what you were asking.
Yeah, it was. It was, yeah. Yeah.
But like okay. You see, we don't use the string interpolation. Like yes, we use the wildcard syntax.
Okay, so we use the wildcard syntax. Create a new app.use call after your login middleware. It should be called for all /beans routes. You can leave the, I haven't put the callback in there.
Exactly. You haven't put that.
Request, response, next. And it says leave it empty, so that's what I'll do. Yeah, so we've got the green tick. Just make this a bit bigger. Copy all the check-in logic from const bean name, which is const bean name. Copy all the check-in logic from const bean name through the if statement. So that's going to be at the top inside this.
No, it's in the routes.
It's in the routes. Oh, okay, so I'm looking for this route.
Yes.
There. So copy all the check-in logic from const bean name through the if statement from a route into your middleware callback. Remove those lines of code for every route. So I'm removing the if statement.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just chop that out because it says from const bean name. So I'll just chop that out and move it into the app.use.
Correct.
Okay. And then const bean name. Okay, so that's a different. Okay.
Yeah, basically go checking if that if statement is in another place, just remove it.
Well, that's completely different.
Yeah, that's not the same.
That's the same.
Yeah, take it away from that.
Okay. Yeah, that's the same. That's the same. And that's it.
Yeah.
So can we just go through what's actually going on now? So we've taken, if I go back up to that if statement, so what it's saying is every time I hit this route, this logic's going to get executed.
Before it gets executed, before you go through to the get, the post, the put, or the delete.
Okay, so say a request comes in from the client, it's going to trigger this middleware. So before it actually gets down to the app.get, this code's going to get executed, do its thing, and then, like we saw earlier, we call next, and only then does it go on to run the next middleware.
Yeah, so actually after the if statement, if the if statement is successful, you should call next.
Right. Okay.
Like
So
in line 41, after line 41, just call next.
after the check-in logic, we're going to attach the correct bean object to the request by setting a bean property on the request.bean. Set it equal to the correct bean from the bean object. For good measure, also attach the bean name to the request as request.bean name. After these properties are set, be sure to call next. Okay, so just give me a sec. So after the check-in logic, which is this, so after this, right, going to attach the correct bean name, the correct bean object. Well, have we got it? We've got, okay, so we've got this here. Okay, so let me just get my head around this. So we've got an object with a bunch of keys in there, and the values are objects. Okay.
So basically, if it's The if statement is checking if the jelly beans are in the bag, meaning that the jelly bean has a key with a certain name. Since if it passes that if statement, meaning that it is inside of that jelly bean bag, we can assume some things, like we can say like we can create a new variable in the request object. Like for example, we can say request that bean name is equal to the bean name that we got from the params, and we can assume that if we call jelly bean back with that bean name, we get the correct jelly bean. So we can say like request.bean equals jelly bean bag square brackets bean name, and the next functions that will use the next middleware that will be called after this one will get access, just like when we get access to rec.params or rec.query, and they have like the bean name or the IDs. The other middleware will get access to rec.bean name and rec.bean.
I get it. I got it. I get it. I'm still going to have to read it though. I think like what you're saying is once this gets checked and the code gets executed, when this next function runs, the data that's inside is going to end up in it gets passed on to the next middleware. Is that what you're trying to get at?
Yeah, basically whatever data that we want to add to the request object or the response, we can add it. So since we checked that the jelly bean is inside of the bag, so there it exists in the bag, we can prep up the next middleware to have access to a variable called rec.bean or rec.bean name.
Yeah.
Because we check already that the bean name exists inside of that jelly bean bag. So we can basically, to avoid having to say in the next middlewares that params that bean name is the bean name, we can make it short and say like rec that bean name will have whatever was in the bean name in the params.
Yeah, I got you. Okay, so we're going to attach the correct bean object to the request by setting bean property, which is so bean property on the request.bean. Okay, so
Yeah, basically you call it like this rec.bean, you set it equal to something.
yeah, rec.bean is going to be equal to the bean name.
No, that's the whole bean. You will create another one called rec.bean name, and that will be equal to bean name. Yeah.
Right, give me a sec. Yeah, I'll have to, now that you've given it to me, let me read it again. We're going to attach the correct bean object to the request by setting a bean property on the request, rec.bean, set it equal to the correct bean from the bean object. For good measure, also attach the bean name to the request as rec.bean name. Oh yeah. Okay. Are we missing something though?
Yes, we're missing the bean, rec.bean.
Oh, okay, so that's the whole object.
The whole object would be like rec.bean equals jelly bean back at bean square brackets bean name.
Yeah. So you can now remove the duplicate check in logic from all of the /bean/wildcard. Okay, so I'm looking for the wildcards. Okay. So it doesn't exist in there. That's not the right route endpoint. We've removed it from there. Okay, so let me just carry on reading. So to make sure that all your routes still work, if we remove const bname equals rec.params.bname from them, make sure that to make sure that all your routes still work, if we remove const bname equals rec.params.bname from them, make sure that you use rec.bname in any place where you need to access the bean by name. For instance, inside app.delete, you'll have to change this to this.
So yeah, like you see there in the line 124, when they are saying like jelly bean bag request bean name, we can use their request.bean.
Request.bean. Yeah.
Just request.bean. Remove the jelly bean bag completely. Just leave request.bean. Because basically we have that code already from our middleware.
Right. Okay.
We get access to request.bean and request.bean name.
Right. On this rec.on.
Yeah.
Right. So now I'm looking for these. Jelly bean bag bean name equals null. So there's one there.
Wherever they say bean name, you have to replace it with rec.bean name.
Oh, so we're basically using something similar to this.
So
yeah, I'm a bit lost here, if I'm honest.
okay, so you see the if statement in line 61?
Yeah.
You see they're using bean name?
Yeah, they're using bean name on both sides. Yeah, I can see that.
You need to replace bean name with request.bean name.
Same here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I got them all.
Yep.
Wow, I think I'm going to have to watch this one again.
Yeah, so basically, since we took away the if statement from each route, remember that we did that and we converted it to an app.use?
I'm just trying to find where we actually did the first part so I can just go through it one more time.
Okay.
Okay, so this is where the magic happens. So we get the, okay, so we save the name. Yeah, so we save this wildcard into this variable. Then we say, so there's the if statement. So if this is falsy, yeah, we send them the 404. If it's not, rec.bean equals jelly bean bag bean name.
And the rec.bean name equals bean name, because the other routes won't have access to the bean name anymore because we took it away from them.
Right.
So they will need access to this object that we created inside of request called bean name. So we need to check every instance where they use bean name and replace it to rec.bean name, because bean name, it's no longer accessible inside of those routes.
Okay. I get, so where's this? So we've put this on the rec object.
Yes.
Right. So we are creating this. Right. I get it. Wow, it's a lot to take in, man.
Yeah, it could be.
So control with next. We've experienced writing middleware that performs its functions and hands off the request and response objects to the next function in the stack. But why exactly do we have to write next at the end of every middleware? If it always needs to be at the end of every function we write, it seems like an unnecessary piece of boilerplate. You might be surprised to learn that we aren't going to introduce a way to automatically hand off the request and response objects without having to repeatedly write next. Rather, we're going to explore why it is useful to have next as a separate function call. The biggest reason being we don't always want to pass control to the next middleware in the stack. For example, when designing a system with confidential information, we want to be able to selectively show that information to authorized users. In order to do that, we would create middleware that tests a user's permissions. If the user has the permission necessary, we would continue through the middleware stack by calling next. If it fails, we would want to let the user know that they're not allowed to see the information they're trying to access.
So that makes sense to you? Or
Yeah, it does. Yeah, because basically, what they would probably do is say the user had a token or something. You could check the token, and if it was valid, you could call the next, and if it wasn't, you do a res.send and throw up a JSON object or something saying like you're not allowed to access.
Exactly. You use the next conditional. Only when the certain condition is met, you can use the next. If that condition is not met, you don't use the next.
So notice how our middleware correctly calls next. If your if block is entered, meaning the bean does not exist, the function returns to break from the middleware. We could also achieve the same result by putting all the code after the if block in an else. Next is called at the end of the middleware callback function. This placement ensures that if a bean does not exist, the proper error status is sent. But if it does exist, we attach it to the request object and proceed to the next matching route /middleware to complete the request response cycle.
We have been covering this Express course for you guys. Stay tuned for the next one. Hit the like if you like it and subscribe and turn on the notifications to see the next video when the next video comes out. Also, there is attached, there is in the description is a playlist. If you have missed any previous episode, you can go there and watch it. Thanks for watching.